Good morning and welcome to the Friday meeting of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents. At this time, I'll ask Madam Clerk to please call the roll.
Regent Peterson?
Here.
Regent Green?
Here.
Regent Atwell? Regent Bethel?
Here.
Regent Delgado?
Here.
Regent Hall? Regent Jones?
Here.
Regent Klein? Here. Regent Lovezo? Here. Regent Manydeeds? Regent Mueller? Here. Regent Peterson? Here. Regent Plant? Regent Stanford Taylor? Regent Tiedemann?
Here.
Regent Walsh?
Here.
Regent Whitburn?
Here.
Regent Woodmansee?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we consider items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest with today's agenda? Regent Jones.
Yes, to avoid the appearance of any conflict, I'd like to recuse myself from discussing or voting on the Business and Finance Committee items L and M related to Smith-Claxo-Kline.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The records of the November 7th, 2019 and November 26th, 2019 Board of Regents meetings have been provided. May I have a motion to approve these records?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The reports of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board and the Higher Education Aids Board have been provided. Are there any comments or questions? Before we go any further this morning, let's thank again Chancellor Watson and the Warhawk team for their great hospitality these last 2 days. Yesterday, it was also terrific to spend some time on the Rock County campus and to present for the announcement and to be present for the announcement that more students at UW-Whitewater at Rock County will soon be able to pursue engineering degrees through UW-Platteville's engineering partnerships. The program will debut in the spring of 2020 semester and provide valuable new opportunities to students. So congratulations to Chancellor Watson and the whole UW-Whitewater community. Congratulations also to Chancellor Shields. Turning now to my President's report, let me offer a brief update on our ongoing searches. First, I'm pleased to share the news, if you haven't already heard, that Dr. Catherine Frank has agreed to become the 8th Chancellor at UW-Stout. Dr. Frank will come to us from Central Washington University in Ellensburg, Washington, where she is currently Vice President of Academic Innovation and a Professor of English. Last week, the board unanimously approved her appointment following a recommendation made by the selection committee. Dr. Frank will assume her role on March 1st, and we will provide a more complete introduction at an upcoming meeting. On behalf of the board, I'd like to extend my appreciation to Interim Chancellor Patrick Guilfoyle for leading the campus through this time of transition. Not sure that Patrick's here today.
Yeah, Glendalee is representing him today.
Thank you, Glendalee. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our Special Regent Committee for their work, and that includes Regent Chair Jason Plant, who served as chair, as well as Regents Chris Peterson, Carolyn Stanford Taylor, and 2 Regent Emeriti, John Robert Bailing and Mark Tyler. Turning to UW Green Bay, the 13-member Search and Screen Committee led by Chair Bob Atwell and Vice Chair of Biology, Professor Michael Draney, is currently in the process of identifying candidates. The committee expects to meet in early January to select the semifinalists for interviews. Now I'll shift to our search and the process to replace UW System President Ray Cross. The search for a successor to UW System President Ray Cross is now underway. The Presidential Search and Screen Committee, chaired by Regent Vice President Michael Greevy, will be officially charged later today and will work with the Storbeck Pimentel search firm to begin identifying potential candidates. As this process rolls out, it is vitally important that all interested parties have an opportunity to express their thoughts and to engage. To that end, we've already started hosting listening sessions to engage and gather input from faculty, staff, and other university stakeholders and all Wisconsin citizens who have an interest in this search. We had 2 separate meetings yesterday technically Wednesday, with provost and senior student affairs officers. We have 4 additional meetings scheduled for next Friday with governance groups, including faculty representatives, academic staff representatives, and university staff representatives. Before the holiday break, we plan to hold multiple additional stakeholder meetings with groups such as chief budget officers, chief diversity officers, student governance leaders, and others. The schedule will be finalized very soon, and will broadcast the dates and locations widely. If participating in a listening session isn't convenient, our search website will feature a platform to submit individualized feedback online to members of the search committee. That should be available early next week. There's no more important responsibility for this board than selecting UW system leadership, including the system president, and that charge is clearly spelled out in statute. It is a responsibility we must take very seriously. In a competitive environment where multiple state systems are actively searching for new presidential leadership, we have a dedicated, nimble, and well-credentialed committee comprised of board and academic leadership that represents important and diverse interests. The credentialed committee includes Regent Mike Jones, Ed Manideeds, student Tori Tiedemann, and myself. Also serving on the committee are UW-Madison Chancellor Rebecca Blank, Regent Emerita Regina Milner, UW-La Crosse Provost Betsy Morgan, and UW Superior Chancellor Renee Wachter. I am confident this group will successfully accomplish this charge. Turning to our All in Wisconsin tour, we held the last get-together of 2019 yesterday morning here at UW-Whitewater. This follows a doubleheader event 2 weeks ago at UW-Stout and UW-Eau Claire. We continue to meet with community and business members who are enthusiastic about working with the university, both their local campuses as well as the UW system. It's been a very positive experience. The All in Wisconsin tour will resume in early 2020 when we visit our 4 remaining universities. As a reminder, you can find out more about this campaign by checking out our All in Wisconsin hashtag on Twitter or the stories on the wisconsin.edu website. That concludes my president's report for today, so I'll now turn the floor over to President Cross.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. Good morning. I'm going to open my report this morning with the student spotlight. The intent of these regular presentations is to help all of us better understand what it means to be a student on one of our campuses, how our students got here, why they're here, what they're working on and hope to do in the future, what issues are most important to them. The Student Spotlight is a chance to see the UW from their perspective and to remind all of us why we are here. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Adrianna Green, an undergraduate and student athlete here at UW-Whitewater. Adrianna's journey with UW-Whitewater actually began many years ago. Throughout her life, with its many challenges and successes, her Warhawk family has been a real mainstay. I will tell you that she is from Racine and majoring in psychology, but I will let her tell the rest of the story. I think you will find it inspiring. Welcome, Adrianna.
Can everyone hear me?
Right.
Okay, here we go. Let's fix it a little bit. How about now?
Yes.
Better? Okay.
You turned it up.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Adrianna Green, and I'm here today to tell you about my time at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I am currently a junior at the university, majoring in psychology with a minor in coaching, in hopes of one day finding a career as a sports psychologist. This is my 2nd year working as a resident assistant for our university housing, and my 3rd year playing for the UW-Whitewater basketball team. My journey here at Whitewater actually began many years ago. My mother and I moved out to Whitewater when I was just 1 year old, and I actually attended the campus daycare while my mom worked as a grant project coordinator. We moved back to the city where I was born, which was in Racine, Wisconsin, right before I started elementary school, and that's where I've lived ever since. Little did I know that several years later, I would be back pursuing a career that I am so passionate about, playing a sport that I love, and making memories that I'll cherish forever. The passion for my wanting to become a sports psychologist began during my junior year of high school in my track season. I ran track all 4 years of high school, and my best event was a 400-meter dash. However, I absolutely hated the race. I knew I was able to compete physically, but mentally was a different story. Before my race, I would do an exercise that I didn't know at the time was known as self-talk, which would help me build up my confidence before going into my event. And I would tell myself things like, "You can do this. You're going to do great. It's only less than a minute of your day." I later found out that many people, especially athletes, use this exercise as well to enhance the way they feel about themselves and how they feel about what they can achieve in life. Seeing this exercise work so effectively in my life, I really wanted to learn more to improve my athletic performance and also share my discoveries with other athletes. This was when I knew I wanted to be a sports psychologist. During my time here at Whitewater, I've had to overcome some adversity. My freshman year, I really struggled financially, and in order to pay for my student bill, my family and I actually hosted a dinner as a fundraiser to raise money for my college tuition. I realized after my first semester that I needed to get a job fast, which eventually led to 2 jobs on top of my basketball schedule and academic priorities. I wasn't sure if I would be able to do it all, but I realized I had to if I wanted to stay in school and be able to continue doing what I love. I decided to go talk to my coaches about my financial situation to let them know that I might not be able to continue playing basketball because I needed more time out of my day to work. My coaches reassured me that everything would be okay and that they would be more than willing to work with me and my busy schedule so that I could continue being on the team. My life turned out to be better than it was before. My grades were great. I was hired on as a resident assistant in the Airy Fricker complex and also worked at the Whitewater Aquatic Center, where I had the pleasure of meeting some of the most amazing individuals. And my athletic career was on the rise. Just when things started to feel almost perfect, I was faced with one of my toughest battles life has thrown at me. While playing in the 3rd conference game of my sophomore year, I went down with a knee injury that ended up being a torn ACL and partially torn meniscus, which meant I wouldn't be able to participate in the sport I've loved and played since I was a kid for 9 months at least. I was devastated because I felt as if a piece of my identity had been stripped away so suddenly, and I had constant thoughts running through my mind on why this had to happen to me. I definitely hit my lowest point during my recovery, but with the support of my teammates, coaching staff, and of course, my family, I am proud to say that I am in a great mental state as well as cleared to participate in the sport starting this season. Now, fast forward to present day to me giving this speech, and I can honestly and wholeheartedly say that I wouldn't trade those experiences for the world. Struggling financially taught me that I have to work hard for everything in life and that it is always okay to ask for help. Overcoming my injury taught me that you can never take anything for granted and that I have some amazing people in my corner that I can always count on. I have definitely found my home away from home here at Whitewater and created a family with a bond that blood couldn't make any stronger. I am thankful and blessed for my time here thus far at the university, and I can't wait to see what the remainder of my time here has to offer. I really appreciate your time and for allowing me to share my story with you today. Thank you.
So maybe the board has some questions, but before you do, I'd like to recognize your grandparents and father, at least 2 of your grandparents. So would you please stand? You have a wonderful daughter and granddaughter. I think you should be very proud.
Thank you very much, Adrianna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrianna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Turning now to state updates. Governor Evers recently signed Act 36, legislation that will streamline the contracting process for faculty engaged in research projects with outside entities. We expect this bipartisan bill will help accelerate the critical research UW system faculty do to improve lives and help all of our campuses increase their research potential. We thank Governor Evers for signing this important bill and also offer thanks to Senators Dan Fine and Fred Risser and Representatives David Murphy as well as Sheila Stubbs for co-authoring this legislation. The bill is named for the late Professor Mark Cook, a longtime faculty member and researcher at UW-Madison, who helped spearhead this legislation before he passed away. In mid-November, I joined Missy Hughes, the new Secretary and CEO of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation in Eau Claire, to unveil a new collaborative online resource to help businesses establish internship programs. The online toolkit is expected to help businesses that would like to set up an internship program, but may lack the resources to do so. This new tool has been well received by business and community leaders so far, and we look forward to further collaborations with WEDC. It's important to note there is no other product or toolkit like this in the nation. Believe me, we looked. So we had to develop it. In other news, we have initiated a process of more closely engaging with Wisconsin tribes. I recently met with the Forest County Potawatomi, the Lac du Flambeau tribes, and found these sessions to be very helpful and warmly received. In coming weeks, in fact, I think it's next week we expect to have meetings with the Oneidas, Menominee, and the Stockbridge-Munsee tribes. Now it's time for news from around the system, so please turn your attention to the big screen.
What started as a pen pal project between UW-Whitewater students and second graders in Beloit, Wisconsin, has transformed into an award-winning mentorship program. The Little Scholars Program recently won an Outstanding Achievement Award from the Wisconsin State Council on Affirmative Action. College students write letters to their little buddies, and the groups visit one another during the school year. In fact, the Little Scholars had an inspiring visit last spring to tour campus, visit classrooms, and work on STEM projects with their college buddies. From open heart surgery in high school to her first day of college at UW-Superior 2 years later, Rachel Jackman has come a long way. The supportive campus community and close proximity to family and her physicians helped Rachel choose a college that felt like home. She continues to advocate for causes she believes in, such as raising $3,000 for the American Heart Association to benefit others who face serious heart conditions. Martell Pipkins remembers not being all that into high school, but a visit to UW-Parkside changed his outlook. His visit inspired him to graduate from Milwaukee Bayview High School in 2005 and then from UW-Parkside 4 years later. Taking his journey full circle, Martell returned to UW-Parkside this fall as Dr. Martell Pipkins, a visiting sociology professor. His goal? Give back, both to make sociology irresistible and to inspire UW-Parkside students to succeed. UW-Oshkosh alumnus Patrick Gauhan, class of '71, is taking lifelong learning seriously. After a 28-year career in public service with the city of Jacksonville, Florida, he returned to school to become a registered nurse and has since discovered a whole new world overseas as a medical missionary. His inspiring work with Smile Train in Central Africa is changing lives, providing more than 500 cleft palate surgeries in the past 5 years. A groundbreaking study led by UW-Stout material scientist Elizabeth Boatman explains how, after 66 million years, blood vessels are preserved in the fossil of a T-Rex dinosaur displayed at the Smithsonian. Microscopic research on a leg bone sample conducted by 5 institutions across the US proves that fossils can help unlock secrets to how the dinosaurs lived. But don't worry, no Jurassic Park-style dinosaur clones will walk the Earth anytime soon. An innovative and inspirational scholarship program at UW-Stevens Point has opened doors to higher education for promising students of color at underserved Milwaukee high schools. For the last 23 years, the Noel Compass Scholar Program has been transforming lives and creating a strong support system for these students that lasts long after they graduate, thanks to the generosity of Stevens Point residents John and Patty Noel. Generous gifts totaling more than $400,000 are moving the UW River Falls Dairy Pilot Plant toward completion. The renovated plant will train the next generation of industry leaders with hands-on learning experiences to develop, produce, and market cheese and ice cream. Graduates who have participated in this unique educational opportunity have consistently gone on to become industry experts at top organizations in the region and nation. Now that's a delicious outlook. This fall, 160 high school students attended UW-Platteville's Women in STEM Career Day. Participants learned about career options through exciting demonstrations and hands-on projects working in teams. Each year, over 650 women and girls benefit from STEM programs at UW-Platteville, which has seen female enrollment in the College of Engineering, Mathematics, and Science increase 75% over the last 8 years. UW-Madison's new Hamill Music Center opened in late October with a free concert. Built entirely with private funds, this state-of-the-art music facility will add excitement to Madison's cultural scene and be a boon for the school's music students. The center offers a sparkling performance venue for students, faculty, and visiting artists with astounding acoustics, helping the School of Music expand its reputation as a place for innovative musicians to teach and study. More than 100 UW lacrosse students are providing extra help for parents in the Wisconsin-Cooley region to raise healthy, resilient children. UWL students volunteer about 2,000 hours annually to keep Gunderson Health System's parent programming running strong. They do this by developing and running adjacent programs for children to learn valuable social and emotional skills. For James Cabral, inspiring his students to fall in love with science is the greatest joy of his job. The UW Green Bay Sheboygan campus chemistry teacher is putting the cool back into science with his popular Cool Chemistry shows and interactive student projects. Because of his efforts, he was recently recognized with the prestigious Underkoffler Award for Teaching. Dr. Ming Li Shea, an associate professor of criminal justice at UW-Eau Claire, is engaging students in collaborative and international immersion experiences to help them gain a broad understanding of multicultural justice. By exploring ideas and practices from other countries, students will be better prepared to help address issues in the United States related to policing and criminal justice. Each year, more than 1,000 middle school and high school students gather at UW-Milwaukee for the Summit on Black Male Youth. The summit encourages students to unlock their potential through inspiring workshops and presenters who highlight options and opportunities for their futures. The summit has grown by 20% in the past 2 years. Perhaps a good indication the event is achieving its goal to inspire.
Well, as you have seen and heard, there are a number of things that are very inspiring that are going on all of our campuses. Finally, the end of the year is often a busy time, but it is also a very exciting time, especially for many students. We often think of graduation ceremonies as springtime events, but for many UW students, the big day happens in December. In coming weeks, about 10,000 students all around the UW system are expected to cross the stage to receive their hard-earned degrees. I know a number of regents are taking part in these ceremonies, and it's always a very special occasion, and it's a privilege to be part of these milestones. On behalf of my colleagues, let me offer early congratulations to all of the new graduates. So that concludes my report, President Peterson.
Thank you, President Cross. We'll now turn to yesterday's actions taken in our committees, and I'll begin by calling upon Regent Jones to present a report of the actions taken by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee. Regent Jones.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. Yesterday, the committee met and heard a presentation by UW-Whitewater entitled Inspire, Engage, Transform, Ideas for Today, Tomorrow, Managing Deferred Maintenance by Vice Chancellor for Administrative Affairs, Grace Cricket. The presentation explains how UW-Whitewater develops creative solutions to address deferred maintenance issues. The presentation captured their project prioritization process, which incorporates the use of preventative maintenance to reduce deferred maintenance. The committee also received a report on the status of leasing between June 1st and November 30th, 2019. In summary, the UW system and UW-Madison hold leases on 1.7 million square feet across the state, which includes 906,000 square feet for student housing. The committee also received a brief update on the UW solely managed capital program. The program, since its inception 4 years ago, has administered 50 projects with a total value of $125 million. Senior Associate Vice President Alex Rowe also provided an update on the recent State Building Commission actions and progress on the fiscal year 2021-2023 capital budget. The committee considered 7 resolutions. We approved Resolution C, brought by UW-La Crosse, to construct the enumerated $49 million Fieldhouse and Soccer Support Facility project, which will provide a 200-meter NCAA competition indoor track with seating space for 1,500 or more spectators, a walking, jogging track, team locker rooms, meeting and training rooms, and office and storage space. The project is comfortably on budget and on schedule. On behalf of UW-Madison, the committee approved Resolution D to execute a lease of space for the Office of Community Relations, UW South Madison Partnership, which operates several community outreach and educational support programs for non-traditional students. The partnership has been in its current location since its inception in 2015, when there were 6 programs generating 700 attendees per month taking courses and using social media. The number has grown to 14 regular programs and 1,100 attendees a month during the 2018-19 academic year. Next, the committee approved Resolution E, brought by UW-Milwaukee, to increase the budget of the Northwest Quadrant renovation and Student Health Service remodel project to fund the demolition of Building A, which is obsolete. The committee granted approval for UW Parkside in Resolution F to construct the previously enumerated $6.7 million campus fire alarm system renovation project. The project replaces and augments the campus-wide fire alarm and smoke detection system across 22 facilities to meet current life safety code and accessibility standards and improve reliability. On behalf of UW-Platteville, the committee approved Resolution G to construct the $55 million new Sesquicentennial Hall project enumerated in fiscal year 17-19. This project constructs a new energy-efficient 99,000 gross square feet academic engineering building adjacent to the engineering hall to provide instructional laboratory suites, project and research laboratories, and support space. A small addition to the north will create 2 active learning classrooms and a welcoming entry for students and visitors. The committee also approved Resolution H, brought by the UW system, to construct 8 all-agency maintenance and repair projects at 4 campuses for a total of approximately $20 million. These projects include a $3 million facility maintenance and repair project at UW-La Crosse and $17 million of utility repair and renovation projects at UW-La Crosse, UW-Milwaukee, UW-Parkside, and UW-Whitewater. Finally, we approved Resolution I, brought by UW-Madison, to increase the budget of the UW-managed Primate Center backup generator project by $700,000 in gift funds. The project provides essential standby backup power for the Wisconsin Primate Center and the Harlow Laboratory. Bids received for the project in April 2019 were higher than the estimated amount, and there were a low number of bidders. After reviewing the bids, it was decided to increase the budget and rebid the project in the winter of 2020. Agenda item J, modification of Regent Policy 1914, quote, naming of university facilities and lands, was pulled from the agenda. We discovered a little glitch in the policy that we hadn't anticipated, and so rather than review it twice, we've sent it back to committee, and we will hopefully have something to present at the February board meeting. In conclusion, I'd like to move Resolution C, D, E, F, G, H, and I for approval.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Any discussion? Any discussion on those matters? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Regent Jones. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to Regent Chris Peterson, who will provide a report of the Research Economic Development Committee. She was pinch hitting this week for
Yes.
Regent Apple.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. In the absence of Regent Atwell, who is the chair of this committee, I had the pleasure and the honor to be the head of it yesterday, and we really had fun. The Ready Committee reviewed and approved the minutes of the October 10th, 2019 meeting, and committee members heard 3 presentations. First, we heard about UW-Whitewater's effort to inspire, engage, and transform communities through data with the work of its Fiscal and Economic Research Center, also known as FERC. The mission of the UW-Whitewater FERC is to tap into faculty expertise in order to provide economic impact analysis to private sector and government clients throughout Wisconsin and beyond. FERC provides students with the opportunity to work closely with faculty experts in applying concepts and theories to practical, real-world cases. This project-based work also maximizes value to future employers. UW-Whitewater professors Russ Kashian, Matthew Winden, and Chotan Basu highlighted the work that they have and their students do for a wide range of clients in business, industry, and academia, including research and analytical work that was done to develop the UW system's own statewide economic impact report. Notably, the Whitewater student researchers come from a wide range of disciplines, including biology major and McNair scholar Adele Contreras and history major Logan O'Brien. In closing, Professor Kashian mentioned the FERC research with student involvement has been published in 20 different peer-reviewed journals. The group's research efforts are so widely respected that new projects generally come via word of mouth from other satisfied clients. Our second topic featured an update on the Regents Scholar Award Program from the YSIS Advisory Committee Chair and UW River Falls Chancellor Dean Van Galen and YSIS President Arjun Sangha. Chancellor Van Galen described the genesis of the project, now in its 5th year, which is designed to recognize and reward stellar faculty research and exceptional work that they accomplish. Regents Scholar Award funds are used to help provide summer stipends for faculty and funding for undergraduate internships that support innovative and collaborative research with industry partners, inventors, and entrepreneurs. Each year, UW System Regents Scholar recipients are selected competitively by an evaluation committee made up of both public and private sector experts. In April 2020, the Board of Regents will formally recognize our next round of Regents Scholar recipients. Finally, we heard an interesting and informative isn't really do it justice, perspective on how to shorten the pathway from idea generation to product commercialization from Wisconsin venture capitalist, researcher, serial entrepreneur, Superman, Chris Salm. Dr. Salm pioneered the Lunchables food product line for Oscar Mayer early in his career before creating one of the largest pre-cooked packaged food businesses in America. The Badger alum, Dr. Salm, works closely with the UW-Madison in a variety of efforts to unlock new ideas that can help improve health and the quality of life and longevity for farm animals and humans. In terms of best practices, he cited collaborators he works with in the Netherlands who have taken their country with 1/5 the landmass of Wisconsin and 3 times the population to one that is today the world's #2 food exporter in the world. It's amazing. Dr. Salm sees many great opportunities ahead for those who can overcome their fear of failure and willingness to build strong relationships. During the discussion, Chancellor Becky Blank commented on the consistent and high level of collaboration Dr. Salm brings to his work with colleagues on the UW-Madison campus. In Chancellor Blank's words, Chris Salm asks the right kinds of questions that help to motivate and excite our researchers, and they definitely motivated and excited everybody in that room yesterday. Said another way, he truly embodies the Wisconsin idea. In addition to his highly informative talking points, Dr. Salm also brought samples of some of his best-selling food products, which I greatly enjoyed last night, a move that sets a new standard for innovative nutrition and food snacks at our Ready Committee proceedings. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson, for chairing the Ready Committee yesterday. I hope we have snacks at committees going forward. Makes a lot of sense.
I think it sets a new trend.
Indeed. I'll now call upon Regent Jerry Whitburn to present a report of our audit committee from yesterday. Regent Whitburn.
I sense if the chair of the audit committee reported that the committee had fun, that might be a bit unseemly. Or even the word exciting would be unseemly. Janice Abraham, CEO of United Educators, the nation's leading liability insurance company in the higher education niche, came in from Washington, D.C. to speak to our committee on the subject of enterprise risk management. Her company insured both Penn State and Michigan State as those universities worked through their significant issues in recent years. She briefed the committee on her sense of best practices these days when it comes to enterprise risk management in very complex organizations such as our own. Some of us have seen her book. Let me share with you one sentence from her book. She writes, "Boards are often tempted to assign responsibility for risk management to the audit committee alone, with a sigh of relief that now someone will be responsible for risk and the rest of the board can rest easy." Not a good trap to fall into, she stresses. The committee reviewed internal audits that had been completed in recent days. We saw the audit on discrimination, harassment, and retaliation on all UW system campuses. On this front, we have good news and we have bad news. The good news is that President Cross has seen to the recruitment early this year of an experienced professional to serve as Title IX and Clery Administrator, and also the establishment of the Office of Compliance and Integrity and the hiring of its first director. We have outstanding professionals now in place. Our internal audit reported that we had 1,360 Title IX cases last year, with 101 that went through the investigative process. Our auditors found specifically, and I might quote, "Currently, UW institutions are at various stages of developing Title IX compliance efforts and do not interpret and document Title IX cases in a consistent manner. This is concerning, and we've asked Sarah Haribo and Katie Ignikowski to work with their colleagues and with the chancellors to ensure that we attain an environment of baseline consistency in the handling of Title IX cases across our campuses no later than mid-year, June 30th. The committee also was briefed on internal audits underway consistent with the auditing plan of the year, and we received updated presentations on risk management plans for cybersecurity and for Title IX. That, President Peterson, completes my report.
Thank you, Regent Whitburn. I'll ask you to keep the microphone for your report of the Audit and Business Finance Committee. Or are we making a modification to that? Jan will take that?
Yes.
Regent Mueller.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Don't make me talk about how exciting the audit committee is again. You know, I've done this for many years. And when you get audit and business and finance committee together, just watch out. But we did meet in joint session yesterday to hear from our UW System Administration team from the Office of Finance and our external auditors, Plant Moran, on the annual financial report that was prepared, and of course the financial statements for fiscal year 2018-19. The Plant Moran audit team spent some time reviewing their audit process. They discussed required communications and internal control matters. We have a clean report attesting to the accuracy of the financial statements, I'm proud to report. And they were very direct in stating that management within UW System at all levels was cooperating with them during the course of the audit. All good news for us as the overseers. I think in terms of the content of the financial statements, there's really only good news. Generally, all of the key indicators are stable. We continue to have a problem with swings in in the data as a result of how required pension and other post-employment benefits are recorded in the financial statement, because that we are part of a larger Wisconsin retirement system. But all in all, a good report. Later in the morning, we met the Business and Finance Committee alone, and we had a presentation also from the Vice Chancellor for Administrative Affairs, Grace Cricket, and she shared with us some of the ways that UW-Whitewater has worked with partners like UW Shared Services to identify areas for improved processes and efficiencies. In fact, we spent some time hearing from a non-traditional student, an intern who's working very hard on the cost and efficiency of herbicides and how they're being used on this campus. They're doing a lot of interesting and innovative things and saving money at the same time. We heard from Chuck Saunders, the Executive Director for the Office of Trust Funds for UW System, who presented the Trust Funds Quarterly Investment Report. Again, note that these funds are now invested by the State of Wisconsin Investment Board. All's well, we have about $602 million in assets under management. We spent most of the committee's time hearing from Chief Human Resource Officer Shanita Brokenberg and Dan Shanan, our System Director of Benefits, about a faculty turnover report and a faculty and staff compensation report. Good news and bad news. The number of faculty departures is declining. Most of those departures are due to retirement. But the number of faculty overall is shrinking, and there are more instructors and fewer faculty. And so the committee members asked that we have more information in the future about faculty to staff ratios unpacked by campus and the compensation provided to the faculty and staff. We then moved on to a number of contracts. And let me go through these very briefly. There were 3 contracts, F, G, and H, that relate to travel associated with UW System employees. Before, we had one master contract, staff, and secured contracts breaking it up. So for example, now there's a separate contract for athletic travel. Really excited and thinking this will save considerable amounts of funding and be more efficient for staff. So item F was a UW System contractual agreement with the company Travel Incorporated, G with Shorts Travel Management, and finally a separate one with Fox World Travel. We also heard from several staff from UW-Oshkosh. They asked approval for a contractual agreement with King's College, a firm that recruits and provides services to international students. And UW-Oshkosh is seeking to increase the number of international students it has on its campus. And then several at least, contracts from UW-Madison with private business. One with Boehringer Ingelheim Pharmaceuticals. They're doing a lot of pharmaceutical work and testing on a number of central nervous system and oncology issues. That's a 5-year contract. Another UW-Madison contract is with Cold Quanta LLC. It's an amendment to a previous contract, and they're doing, we were told, cutting-edge research in quantum computing on the UW-Madison campus. There were 2 separate contractual agreements with GlaxoSmithKline. Their work relates to new drugs under development for the disease of multiple myeloma. Next, Madison's contract is with Parexel International LLC. This is continuing work under a master service agreement for ophthalmology therapies. Moving away from contracts on the financial side, we did approve 2 agenda items for removing Regent policy documents that are out of date relating to public broadcasting, broadcast protection agreement, and position statements that are simply out of date. And we also voted to eliminate a policy that talked about various outside activity reporting from our staff. Those again have been replaced and needed to be removed. Finally, we heard from our Vice Presidents Kramer and Nelson on updates on various projects, including the always important information security, good news on shared service. And I'd highlight a recent workshop that UW System had with the AGB Consulting on best practices in foundation management and oversight. We had one regent attend that, great attendance, and the interplay between the system and foundations is receiving a great deal of attention, as you know. So I think that this workshop was very well received. So in conclusion, and on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I would now move for approval agenda items F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, and Q.
We have a motion and a second. I'll remind Regents we have a recusal for item L and M. All those in favor, any discussion on these matters? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Thank you, Regent Mueller. Riveting. I'll now call upon Regent Klein to present a report of the actions taken by the Education Committee, which she's going to attempt to outdo you.
No.
Take a deep
Thank you,
breath.
Regent President Peterson, but don't make me make jokes. We had a lot to do, no frivolity. My report will begin with a summary of the actions taken yesterday by the Education Committee, and then I will invite University of Wisconsin-Madison Chancellor Blank to join us in order to present a change to the University of Wisconsin freshman admissions policy that relates to University of Wisconsin-Madison. We approved it yesterday and recommended that you will approve it today, but she will join us later in my report. First, I would like to highlight the presentations received by the Education Committee yesterday. Under the leadership of Vice President Morabel Sosa, the committee received the annual report on the UW Academic Program Array. This presentation focused not only on the growth of academic degree programs across all of our campuses, but also the suspension and elimination of programs due to low enrollment. Dr. Morabel Sosa also briefly mentioned the Remedial Education and Accountability Report. We are aware that there's interest and concern regarding that report among many regents, and we will place more emphasis on that report in our February meeting. Next, we received the 2019 annual report of the Wisconsin Partnership Program. Dean Golden was there to join us. He explained how the Wisconsin Partnership Program fulfills its mission of improving the health of people of Wisconsin through the power of collaborative relationships with community leaders, educators, and researchers. Dean Golden also made a point of assuring committee members and the Board of Regents in general that the Wisconsin Partnership Program is committed to fulfilling its obligations under Wisconsin's open records law. Most importantly, Dean Golden described 6 strategic investments and 29 new grants, all of which support health equity and improved health outcomes in the state of Wisconsin. The committee also received an update on the Freshwater Collaborative from UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Mark Money and Provost Johannes Britz. I would say that it looks as if there will be legislative funding for some of this initiative, which is very promising. The executive director search is underway, and UWM committed to return in February with better specificity on timelines and priorities as they're fleshed out over the next weeks and months. We were also inspired by a host campus presentation provided by Interim Provost Greg Cook, together with several deans, professors, and students from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Provost Cook highlighted academic degree programs that fulfill University of Wisconsin-Whitewater's mission to inspire, engage, and transform students for success. In addition, the Education Committee approved the following agenda items. In support of the board's ongoing commitment to keep policies up to date, we approved Regent policy document on faculty sabbatical leave program. We also approved 3 committee appointments to the Oversight and Advisory Committee of the Wisconsin Partnership Program. Those were for 1-year terms. We also met in support of our campuses and approved 6 academic degree programs, including the restructure of UW-Platteville's Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. University of Wisconsin Oshkosh received approval of the Bachelor of Science in Rehabilitation Science. UW-Platteville received approval of 3 new degree programs, including Bachelor of Science in Construction Management, Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and Conservation, and Master of Science in Information Systems Management. University of Wisconsin-Whitewater received approval of 2 degree programs, a Bachelor of Science in Human Performance and a Master of Science in Communication. Finally, we approved UW-Platteville's restructure of the Bachelor of Science in Administration degree, which had various concentrations. Now there will be standalone degrees in the areas of finance, human resource management, integrated marketing, management, professional sales, and integrated supply chain management. As I mentioned at the outset of my remarks, Chancellor Blank joined us yesterday in order to complete a presentation on Regent Policy Document 7.3, which relates to University of Wisconsin system freshman admissions. The revision is as it relates to University of Wisconsin-Madison. At this point, I'd like to invite Chancellor Blank to join us at the table and provide the full board with this presentation. Chancellor Blank, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Regent Klein. I am giving this presentation to the full board because the policy that we are replacing was put in place in December of 2015 and was the result of a discussion among the whole board. So it seemed appropriate to come back to all of you to let you know what is happening. Just to put everyone on the same page, prior to December 2015, the enrollment policy was that the share of non-resident undergraduate students should not exceed 27.5%. And non-resident students were defined as both Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I should note that is the policy for all other schools. That is still in place for everyone else. For UW-Madison, however, in December 2015, we put in place a policy that was explicitly designed to be 4 years, and then the board was going to look at it and decide whether to reaffirm it or to change it. And that policy was to require that we enroll at least a minimum of 3,600 Wisconsin freshmen in the fall. You know, a very much narrower policy focused just on fall freshmen as opposed to the earlier policy. I want to tell you where we've been and what we've done over the last 4 years and take any questions, and then you know, just mention this new policy and where it comes from. I think it's a basically it's not a big change from the 3,600. It simply defines a little more broadly what our commitments to the state are. So since December 2015, I'd like to argue that our commitments to the state of Wisconsin simply couldn't have been stronger. And the best way to describe this is to show you the number of Wisconsin high school graduates in the spring who subsequently enroll at UW-Madison the following fall. 10 years ago, that was 4.9%. 10 years later, in 2019, that's 5.8%. So we are serving an increasing share of the state's high school graduates. The reason the policy was changed, of course, is that the number of high school graduates in the state has been declining. And also at UW-Madison, we've had a very strong increase in our out-of-state applications. If you look at our freshman applications, while Wisconsin has largely been flat and Minnesota's largely been flat, the non-resident applications have more than doubled in the last 10 years. And the new policy was designed to let us take advantage of that increase while still rightfully making sure that we continue to serve Wisconsin in a strong way. So we have been drawing on this growing pool of the out-of-state applicant, growing on this growing out-of-state applicant pool to expand the freshman class. And our freshman class has grown by about 250 students every year over the last 4 years since this policy was put in place. We're probably at a moment of pausing on that. I want to note before I talk about what we've done for the state of Wisconsin that this increase in out-of-state students is good for the state. It's certainly good in part because it's given us funding to strengthen the University of Wisconsin at Madison, to fund additional scholarships such as Bucky's Tuition Promise, which I'll mention again later, to do things that we need to do on campus. But it's also good because we are now the institution that brings more young talent into the state than anyone else. We brought 3,500 non-Wisconsin students into the state last year. We partner with Wisconsin companies to recruit them, to place them in internships, to bring the companies into the classroom and into career fairs. And 1 year after graduation, our current data show that 21% of those non-resident students are living, working, or studying in Wisconsin. That's a relatively high number. As I say, the revenue from these students also has helped the University of Wisconsin-Madison be better. So this is a win-win, as President Cross has described it, both by bringing in more out-of-state students while maintaining a very, very strong commitment to those in-state. Meanwhile, what have we done for the in-state students in addition to simply taking a higher percentage of them? One of the things the Regents asked us to look at 4 years ago was to do more outreach to those very high test score students, particularly those in higher income families that were looking out of state for college. Because if you leave the state for college, the likelihood you're coming back is simply, a lot lower. So we've put in place what we call Wisconsin Prime, a very high-touch recruiting program aimed at students in Wisconsin with ACT scores of 31 or higher. That's the top 90 percentile of the ACT test. These are typically the students who are often looking out of state and may or may not have been applying to us. So we've tried to make sure they understand how good the flagship in Wisconsin is and to get them to apply here. And, I can't attribute this all to that program. I can't entirely say that's true, but since we started the program, we've had a 30% increase in enrollment among that 31 plus ACT score students. And, I consider that a very successful outcome and very much doing exactly what the Regents charged us with doing 4 years ago. And you've seen this chart before, in part because of that. If you look at ACT scores on the left or SAT scores on the right, both Wisconsin and non-Wisconsin students coming into UW-Madison have showed increased test scores. So we've increased numbers and increased quality both at the same time. At the same time that we were looking at the high ACT score students, we're also worrying about accessibility. And you've all heard about both Bucky's Tuition Promise, aimed at low-income students coming in as freshmen, and Badger Promise, aimed at first-generation transfer students, where we give to these students either a 4-year or a 2-year promise of scholarships that will cover all of their tuition and fees. The chart shows you where these students came from this last fall in 2019. They're from all over the state. There are a few counties we haven't quite hit yet, but we're going to in the next year or two. And this is doing exactly what I wanted it to do, partly funded by our increase in out-of-state students, and again, reflecting our very strong efforts to make sure that we maintain the strongest possible commitment to Wisconsin students. Lastly, I would note that this is not just an issue of who's enrolling as freshmen. You've really got to ask who's graduating, because bringing people into UW-Madison, if they don't succeed there, if they don't graduate there, is not a good thing to be doing. I'm quite proud of the fact that we show a high level of success with virtually all of our students. Our 6-year graduation rates are among the top 10 in public universities. You've seen some of this other data in other presentations I've made. But we're not just enrolling Wisconsin students, we're making sure that they do well and graduate. Finally, let me just say a word about reciprocity. The enrollment policy that governs all the other schools defines in-state students as both Wisconsin and Minnesota. And that comes directly out of our reciprocity agreement, which says, for purposes of admission, in-state students in Minnesota and Wisconsin are both counted as in-state students. And I really want to go back to that broader definition for the following reason, that because of the ways in which reciprocity affects our enrollment numbers, we have more Minnesota students here because we offer them in-state tuition, but we also have fewer Wisconsin students because Minnesota offers them in-state tuition. So the result of reciprocity is that our Wisconsin numbers don't look quite as strong as some of our peers. But when you add our Wisconsin and Minnesota numbers together, they look exactly like our peers. So, I want to go back to that broader definition, and the result of all of this is the following proposed policy. And this is basically codifying what we have been doing, but recognizing the full range of ways in which we serve in-state students. Rather than focusing solely on incoming freshmen in the fall, the new policy expands that to cover all new enrolled students over the year. That includes then both transfer students, and it includes students who come in off-cycle. And we have growing numbers of students who do the off-cycle admission. And those are as much our commitment to Wisconsin as those who come in September straight out of high school. It also, consistent with the policy that all the other schools in the system are under, includes both Wisconsin and Minnesota students under the in-state definition. So the proposal is that we enroll a minimum of 5,200 in-state students each calendar year based on a 3-year rolling average. That is essentially where we have been over the last 4 years, obviously counting all of these students as mentioned, and also says that we are very much expected, and we expect to continue our minimum 3,600 enrollment policy for Wisconsin freshmen coming in the fall. And then I'd ask you to enact this as the existing policy without a set termination date. For our long-run administrative and admission planning, it's really useful to think we've got a policy in place that we aren't going to have to revisit again in 3 years or 4 years. I emphasize, as I say in the paper that I think you all received, the Regents can reopen any policy at any time. So if you want to come back and rediscuss this, you can call me in and we can do that. But it would be helpful to have this policy in place, at least until you decide you want to reopen it. So that's the proposal. Questions?
I'll just make a brief comment if I could. In September, Chancellor Blank and I authored an opinion piece talking about the importance of enrollment and the success that we've had over the last 4 years that I think was very well received. And I think much of this policy represents a genesis of that, which was the maintenance of that 3,600, which we both agree is pivotal, but also looking at the holistic view of the entire support that we're providing in-state on an annualized basis. I am very comfortable with this policy. I'll be supporting it. I very much appreciate you bringing this forward, and frankly, the success that we have had in driving quality and driving enrollment to new levels. So with that, I just wanted to appreciate the effort here.
Thank you.
Regent Klein?
Regent President Peterson, do you want to take any questions, or should I just?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Questions of the board? I think you've handled this well.
All right.
I'll turn it back to you,
Thank you.
Regent Klein.
Yeah, and I would just make a quick note to say that Chancellor Blank has navigated this important issue to us very, very well. I commend her for her dedication to complete and transparent discussion with all of the Board of Regents and the Education Committee. I think the Education Committee was extraordinarily satisfied with the balance that she struck on, in a side note, to expand the use of our facilities and to respond to the budgetary constraints the way she has, through adopting the common application, accommodating one of the largest but also the most talented class of freshmen that we've seen at University of Wisconsin-Madison is quite a feat, and everything we ask of chancellors in this day and age of limited resources. I especially commend her for being true to our mission to educate the people of Wisconsin through the Bucky's Promise and the Wisconsin Prime program. And just want to make a note, 57% of our graduates at University of Wisconsin-Madison graduate without debt. That is remarkable, and I just want to say thank you, Chancellor. Job well done. Therefore, I move resolutions F through N and O for adoption by the board, including without limitation the amendment to the policy, Regent Policy Document 7.3 as described by Chancellor Blank.
Thank you, Regent Klein. May I have a second? Any further discussion on the Education Committee? Yes, Regent Bechtel.
Yeah, just Regent Peterson, just one point of emphasis. I think also, I don't serve on the Education Committee. Thank you for your efforts, Regent Klein, as well as the committee. But I echo the positive comments, and Chancellor Blank, you and your team have once again given us a data-rich presentation, so thank you very much for that. And for me, it really recognizes more holistically the talent pipeline, how it really works. We've gone from a snapshot to a much broader kind of sense of vision. I see this as very much in sync with, I think, the Regent policies where we are trying to improve and increase the transfer between the different institutions and recognizing that students, when they're ready to go to Madison, this would allow that. It also allows us to track that type of talent pipeline. Because we really want to have across the system wide access to our resources and opportunities at all the different campuses. So it just seems to me to be a much more thoughtful and holistic picture of how we attract students into the state. And also, I'll be looking in the future to how are we attracting students that might start their careers or at other campuses out of state, and are we attracting them back into the state, whether it's at UW-Madison or other campuses. So I think, again, that broader vision to me is just totally consistent with the talent pipeline approach that many of us work in day to day. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the long-term positive effects this policy can have on the whole system.
Well said, President. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Regent Klein.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to item number 11. We'll turn our attention to the keen topic of interest to this board, and that is how to better attract and serve more non-traditional students, certainly in alignment with our discussion on enrollment. Before we have our presenters, we'll have President Cross make a few words to start us off. So President Cross.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. At our last meeting, we heard the early numbers for fall 2019 enrollment. You will recall our overall enrollments are down slightly, reflecting demographic trends and, of course, a robust economy. The facts are pretty clear. The pool of traditional age students is smaller. At the same time, we know that to keep our economy humming, we need more people with degrees. We need to grow our college enrollments and degree holders. As we've heard everywhere, we've gone in as a part of our All Wisconsin tour, businesses are screaming for more talent. And in Wisconsin, the UW system, which has a unique ability to both attract and develop talent, we are the best talent magnet Wisconsin has. As expected, our current enrollments may be slightly lower, but we are producing a record number of graduates, more than 36,000 each of the last 6 years. To meet employer demands and to allow our economy to continue to grow, we need to do more. As noted in a recent Wisconsin Policy Forum report, and I quote now, "Spreading the benefits of the strengthening economy to other parts of the state likely will require increased college completion in these areas, which in turn may necessitate improved educational outcomes at the K-12 level as well. All of our universities are focusing great attention on managing their enrollment numbers, while also finding new and creative ways to attract and retain more talented students, both from within Wisconsin and from out of state. This push also resonates with leaders in our UW System Business Council. These leaders are also very interested in new approaches like unbundling the higher education experience. That includes creating micro-credentials, validating institutional organizational taught competencies, increasing non-credit bearing offerings, providing stacked credentials, and assessing individual competencies. I should point out that these are national trends as well. One particular slice of our population that is of special interest to all of us is what we typically call non-traditional students. Though, you should note, they're increasingly becoming the traditional student. Data shows that there are an estimated 815,000 people over the age of 25 in Wisconsin who have some college credit but no degree. Previous research we accomplished at Extension shows that a minimum of 10% of these people would be interested in continuing their college education if they could also continue working. As we're about to hear, however, these students are different from our so-called traditional students. They have different needs, different priorities. The UW system is undertaking a variety of strategies to meet these needs, And one very significant player in these efforts is our UW Extended Campus, which has the mission to serve these non-traditional students. So Aaron Brower, the Executive Director of UW Extended Campus, is here to tell us more. Aaron?
Thank you, President Cross. I'm actually going to turn it first over to, well, as you see, first of all, we have a panel before you. We have a presentation planned to leave lots of time for discussion and questions. We hope this is going to be an engaged conversation. I'm going to turn it to Chancellor Ford to introduce our national guest speaker, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about trends and strategies to attract and serve non-traditional or new traditional students throughout the UW system. And it's building on a lot of what we've already heard throughout this meeting. And we've heard a lot about and heard from our students that are non-traditional. Yesterday, during the presentation at the Audit Committee, Janice Abraham, the President and CEO of United Educators, someone asked her about the top 3 challenges that we face in higher education. And she listed these: demographics, how students learn, and technology as the enabler and support. And I thought, wow, she just teed up our presentation for today. So today we are going to share a lot of information. This will be another data-rich presentation. We will provide a national perspective, what is happening, what we are doing in the University of Wisconsin, but what we need to do to gain a greater market share of adult learners. We are going to talk about our collaborative degree opportunities and certainly learn from our national speaker and also one of our current students. But I want to, before I introduce Marie, I want to remind us of something one of the adult learner last night at the signing with UW-Platteville and UW-Whitewater Rock County said. He talked about his pathway through the collaborative engineering program. And he thanked, in the end, he said, "Thank you for providing options for me, because I didn't think I had any options." And so I think that's the opportunity before us, is that these are the options that we must present to learners of today and tomorrow. And so I am very proud to be here with Dr. Aaron Brower of UW Extended Campus, Richard Carter, who happens to be a UW Parkside student in the collaborative degree program HIMT, and then my friend and colleague Marie Cheney, who serves as the president of CALE. And CALE is the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. Marie became the president of CALE 18 months ago, and during this time she has traveled the United States, meeting with states, meeting with systems, meeting with campuses and industry partners to truly live the mission of the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, which is for every adult to have a pathway to lifelong learning and meaningful work. I will start my 6th year on the board of CALE in January, and Marie is a passionate advocate for adult learners. And so Marie, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for helping us to understand the opportunities set before us. So please join me in welcoming Marie Cheney.
Thank you, Chancellor Ford, and thank all of you for your kind invitation to be here today. I've been asked by Aaron Brower to basically set the table so that you understand what's going on nationally with adult learners in particular, but really to understand that, as the nation goes, so goes Wisconsin. And so the trends that we're seeing nationally about adult learners are really ones that I think you need to pay attention to, but I would also say provide some wonderful opportunities both for those adult learners and for the Wisconsin system. First, let me tell you a little bit about my background so you know why I'm here. Who am I to come here and tell you about adults in Wisconsin? I've spent my career in adult post-secondary education. I was not born thinking that that's what I would do, but I fell in love with them when I first started working with adult students very early in my career in the early 80s. And just spent my career in institutions or in parts of institutions that focused on the adult learner. And I don't have to tell you, most adults, their primary identity is not that of a college student. It is that of a family, leading a family, a worker, a person with a career, somebody who's taking care of others. And so it's very difficult and has been difficult in the past for adults to find their way into a college degree. And so I really spent my career in institutions helping institutions understand how to better serve adult learners. And I laugh because I often joke, and I have the scars to prove it, because when you're trying to change institutions and large systems that are very used to serving the 18 to 22-year-old, you really have to make some systemic changes that are often very difficult. At University of Maryland University College, which is now UMGC, they changed it to Global Campus. All really cool things happen, after you leave a place. I thought we should be that for a long time. We had 85,000 students. I was the provost there, and prior to that, a dean. We had 85,000 students worldwide, many military veterans, et cetera. And so, I always say, if you know how to serve veterans and active duty military, you've got adults down, because talk about lots of other things going on in their lives. And we actually taught downrange. People were in harm's way and they'd come in for classes, and it was, just part of our mission. So I became the president of CALE on July 1st, 2018, but who's counting? And I had been involved with CALE my entire career, and Chancellor Ford is on my board, and she's just a wonderful example of the passionate board of folks who are really concerned about adult learners. And so what CALE does is to really think about, we've been around for 45 years, and so our mission has to keep adapting. So what is it that we're doing to provide more pathways, education to career pathways for adults? And I think that we're in a really, actually wonderful, opportune time when a lot of things are happening and changing. And when you think about the adults that you all are trying to serve, that is your new normal. I mean, the non-traditional students, they're traditional. We should stop calling them non-traditional, because that's actually more the typical student. We just don't see them necessarily because they're not here during the day. They're either online or they're going to school at night. So I come from a pretty rich background in working with adults and very passionate about it, and so couldn't be more pleased to be spending this time with you. So I have a great graphic designer, and I said I want a good illustration of the cataclysmic change, the tectonic shifts that are occurring, not only in higher education but in our society. And we really are moving from a time when we're only focused on 18 to 22-year-olds, which, by the way, very important age range. But the adult learner, everyone else, equally and probably even more important, because the days of one and done, got my degree when I was 22 and I'm never going back, there are people who say that. Those days are gone. They've probably been gone, but we haven't really focused on it. Our world now is continuous learning throughout our career, learning in the flow of our work and career. And so I think that's what, there you go. So part of what you need to know is that there's going to be a fairly precipitous drop in the 18 to 22-year-old population. And it's coming soon, and it's going to last for a long time. In fact, if you see somewhere in the 2024 region, it'll hit a peak, and then it's going to go downhill. The students just aren't there. And so even if you go to another state to try to find the 18-year-olds, they're not there either. Everybody's going to be competing for this group of students. So for that reason, alone, you might want to be thinking about other populations of students to serve in the state of Wisconsin. At the same time, though, and we'll show you this on a map, to me this actually tells me more. I mean, there are states that, hey, it's actually traditional age students are growing. Texas, Montana, Idaho. But look at the Northeast. Northeastern U.S., they are in a world of hurts. That's why you're seeing so many schools closing, merging. We're doing a lot of work with the state systems to try to help them pivot. Look at Pennsylvania. They have a very vibrant state system that is undergoing big changes because they just don't have enough students to serve in many of the rural communities. So you can see where Wisconsin is. And it might not be the worst color, but it's not, it's something to really be thinking about. And there's some recent research that just came out that the lowered birth rate is going to be continuing. People have not started having more children more recently, even though the economy is fine. So this is something that's just going to be for the next 30, 40 years in terms of demographics. So when you think about the systems or the symptoms of all this change going on, there are other things that you're seeing that kind of, show us this. So we've got tuition that's out of reach. Not here, apparently. I mean, that's a pretty impressive number, that 57% at Madison graduate without any kind of debt. That's really terrific. But you're seeing things happen because of that. And so there's some like rise of free college, the big change we never thought we'd see in our lives. Alternate providers, I tell people this all the time. If we don't, as a society and as higher ed, take a look at what we do and how we serve folks, there is a private sector that is well-funded and smart people who are coming up with alternative ways of providing training and education. And they will get into this. And I'd hate to see all of our wonderful institutions sort of take a little too long to pivot, and then they look around and, geez, someone has done this for us. And it could happen. And you're seeing a lot of mergers and closings. I mean, these are symptoms of things that are just happening. The high tuition is often because colleges can't afford to keep going, and so they just keep putting it on the student. And this it's changing. I think we're at the tipping point. We're seeing these changes. And so the other map I wanted to show you is, as you see these shifting demographics of students that are not, their core identity is not, I live in a residence hall on a campus for 4 years and I get my education. You're seeing some examples out there of new types of higher education. So University of Massachusetts Online, which has been around for a while, it has a new infusion of resources to grow. Purdue Global, which was Purdue bringing in the Kaplan organization, but now it is Purdue. And I know the president, and she's doing wonderful things, wonderful high quality things under the Purdue label. It's like kind of in your, not your backyard, but maybe, your South 40. ASU, I don't have to tell you about Arizona State. They do all kinds of wonderful things, lots online. I don't even have UMGC up there, and I'll tell you why. University of Maryland University College has been around for a long time, and they're doing great things. But when you're an early innovator, it's easy to kind of get stalled. And while I love I still, they're just part of my blood. They're not jumping out ahead as much as these other organizations. They're advertising, but they're not jumping. And so you're seeing a proliferation now of more state institutions that are coming out and saying, we're going to do online. And they're going to do it in some very interesting ways. But you've got your own here, so you're in good shape. It's really important that we really realize that this idea of the 3 phases of life is changing. The idea of school, work, and then retire. I mean, this is what we all kind of grew up with, depending on your age, and it isn't even the case now. It certainly won't be the case in the future. There's some evidence that the first person who's going to live to 150 is probably already born or will be born soon, just in terms of healthcare and the ways that what we know about longevity. When you're living for 150 years, there's no way you're going to go play golf for, the last, 50 of those. So we need to think differently. And so the way to think about it is really surfing waves of change. Because change is accelerating, you're going to see just more of these paradigm shifts that all of us will have to maneuver and then create new value for ourselves as the paradigm shift. And so I asked my graphic designer, look, our lives don't follow just one single path. We need to be upskilled and reskilled and retrained and re-educated and shifting maybe into a whole new career path, like your graduate who is now a nurse. So the life path and education, we have to get ourselves ready and get our students ready for a time when we might start with a first credential, we get a first job, and then we find an employer who wants to develop us and pay for the rest of our education. There's a lot of evidence and discussion now going on that large employers will be doing much more of that, hiring at a skills-based level earlier than the baccalaureate degree, and then helping those folks get their degrees. Good news for those of you who need the tuition to come in. And then that, rather than the individual paying for it, it will be more based on the employer, but the employer will be getting value out of that. And there will be shifting all the way along. And one of the big groups, by the way, and I think we often don't think enough about this, the early retired, the 60, 65, 70, 75, and the older I get, the more, up to 90 is really young. But that's a group of people, some of whom do not want to retire just because of their identity. Who wants to stop working if you're having fun? And many people have to keep working. There's a rising percentage of poverty in that age group, and they can't not work. We have to figure out new ways to help them with new careers. The adult learner profile, so think broadly about adult learner. There's a woman named Carol Cassworm who's a researcher at North Carolina State. She says it's an identity, it's not an age. So you'll hear from Richard Carter, our adult student. If you are doing anything else and studying on the side or even studying full time, but that's not your primary identity, you could be 20 years old and be an adult learner. If you've got 2 kids and a job or 2 and you're 19 years old, you're an adult learner. So I think we have to break down, I hope at some point we just call them learners. Adults are often an online learner. It's just more flexible and accessible. They tend to transfer among several institutions. They start, they stop, they want to go complete. They're most often part-time, and they are focused on earning that degree, not the socialization aspects. Living in a residence hall, joining clubs, learning about internships, I have a great nephew who's, now he's like applying for internships in China. The adult learner is in their home state, in their home area. They're very, connected to their community. They need that degree. So there's all kinds of numbers out there, but here's a number I like to use. There are about 36 million Americans who left college, which is, I think, a fairly damning statistic to higher education, because we don't make it easy often for students to complete. And I don't mean easy in terms of the content, but it's expensive. Sometimes it is difficult to get the classes. We don't really help them understand what careers are available. But 36 million of these folks have left, and there are about 3.8 million who've returned to college in the last 5 years, and about 1 million have completed. There are a lot of students out there, and a lot of them are in Wisconsin, for you to think about. So the national growth numbers are just in a different format there. So about 22% of the U.S. have some college and no degree. About 3.8% recently have been actively seeking options. But we're in Wisconsin, and so how are you all? Well, you track. About 21% of your citizens have some college, no degree, and there are about 400,000 actively seeking options to pursue higher education. And I would argue a whole lot more, they just don't know. The typical person who doesn't understand higher ed doesn't even know what they could get in a higher ed institution, be it a community college or a 4-year. So potential completers, and these are the folks that you really can be looking at. These are the folks who have some credits. They know something about higher ed. They probably have some skills. They're a little older. These are the folks that everybody wants. You should be really looking to find ways to serve them. These are some numbers about post-secondary enrollment in Wisconsin and the some college, no degree population, et cetera, et cetera. What I want to do, I always like to put a face on data. Yes, there's big numbers here, but the person who is sitting at the end of this table, and I don't mean to point you out and make you an example, but he is a perfect example of a person in the military who's completing a degree, has lots of other things going on in his life, and we should learn from people like him, because he will tell us what he needs and what might be difficult. And that's something that I really recommend everybody does. Like, let's learn from our adult learners. Again, just another view of this. The big message here is what's going on nationally is going on in Wisconsin. And so this is an opportunity for you. Now, adults require different things from an institution. They don't tend to live in the residence halls. They're not going to be going to all the basketball games. They might go to one, but they're not going to get season tickets. They have other things. They got to take their kids to scouts. They travel. They need more flexible degrees. They need shorter degrees. They need stackable credentials. And there's different ways that we can do this. You could invest the funds yourselves in moving in some of these directions. And actually, some of these things you probably already are investing funds in, maybe different kinds of credentials or non-credit. But when we talk about online, which is an increasingly big part of helping adults get at least some portion of their education, one of the ways that you can also do this is to work with an OPM, an online program management company. I'm not suggesting this. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Some institutions do this. But you see a lot of this out there. What I'm here to tell you is when I was out, in the field, so as I like to say, and I was at UMUC and doing other things with adults, I will tell you that your extended campus is well known nationally. And I say that because, when I was in Maryland, very often in Maryland, UMUC wasn't, we were just part of the system. People outside of Maryland were like, oh, you're UMUC, you do this high quality online education. So I think it's always good when an outsider can say, you have a gem here. And we look to extended campus for innovation. The competency-based program, when the Flex program came out, I will tell you, I personally talked to my president and said, they just scooped us. We need to come out with one of these. There's real competition nationally when you're talking about adult students. They've done some really cool things, and no, Aaron did not pay me to say that. He did not know I was going to say this.
I will buy you lunch now.
Thank you, great, excellent. I'm glad, or else I was going to have to go to McDonald's on my own. Now, what's really powerful also about this model is that Aaron's group partners with your campuses. And so it's not that Extension is off doing its own thing, sort of making itself its own little college, but taking the intellectual heft from your campuses and really using the skills they know, which has to do more with the instructional design for online courses, which is really different than lecturing, the marketing, the admitting adult students. Adult students are not going to spend a whole lot of time on an online application answering tons and tons of questions. And if there's a question that doesn't apply to them, like what's your SAT score, they will abandon it and just go someplace else. We know this because at UMUC, we used to track abandonment rates of our online form. And you get past maybe 5 or 6 questions, their kids just ask them for something and they're gone. You have to really think differently. So I would say our challenge nationally, and I would submit to you that this is the challenge for Wisconsin, is to transform our educational models to prepare our learners for a rapidly changing world. And by our learners, I mean everyone. Everybody sitting in this room. Your Lyft driver, your Uber driver, your doctor, your accountant, everyone has to, we just got some new research out, I can't remember who did this, but AI is actually going to affect a lot of college-educated people, not just people who are on the floor at Walmart. We all have to get ready. We have to get our future citizens ready. And so that was the big hurrah. Anyway, my big point here is you have a good solution already in your system. And that's what the rest of this presentation is going to be about. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Marie. I'm going to move through pretty quickly that's the end of the slide deck, if you want to go to the beginning. What I want to do is go quickly over what the extended campus is and a bit about how the programs work. We'll get quickly then to Richard and hearing his story. We've got a short video on a couple other students to introduce them to you, and then we can have some discussion, and hopefully we'll have quite a bit of time. Extended Campus came out, and by the way, you have a much fuller report in your board document, so I'm going to breeze through this very quickly so we can get to the discussion. But Extended Campus was born out of the restructuring, a spin-off from what was CEOEL, which was the continuing and online learning arm of Extension. It has been developing this collaborative model over the past decade and developing the resources that are part of it over the past decade. I have many of my colleagues behind me, and they promised to bail me out if I have a question that I can't answer. So, but I do also want to thank them publicly for the really extraordinary work that they do. Before moving forward, I also want to call out and thank the provosts on each of the campuses. Again, these are models that are collaborative across all of our campuses, and there is an awful lot of management and shepherding and cracking the whip that happens on campuses that really comes to the provost offices primarily. Okay. We have about 24 programs right now that are collaborative. You can't read this slide, don't even bother. There are a couple things that are worth mentioning though. Every single one of the 13 campuses is represented in at least one of the programs. There are 3 campuses that are part of 10 or more programs. Most of these are in master's or bachelor's level. That's where the demand is. The programs are in 3 areas primarily. Again, these are all market-driven programs. They're in business and management, IT, and healthcare. And those will continue to be the growth areas going forward. We have a very aggressive program development timeline, and I know that the Regents in the past have asked the question of, can we mount programs more quickly? This represents at least one version of a very aggressive model. So we introduce new programs based on our opportunity research to all of our campus partners in January, and then cycle through in about 20 months, 18, 20 months, to launch programs in the year following September. This is the model that's run for our semester-based collaborative programs. The UW Flex programs are similar, some differences, but pretty similar. This works. We get lots of complaints because we go through on each campus the regular governance steps to get curriculum approved. We use regular faculty in each of these programs. So it just is a very aggressive timeline, but it does work, and it's been the one that we've been using for the past several years. We establish a very carefully laid out understanding of what the expectations are for the partnership. Ambiguity is not a friend in these collaborative models. And we write up a formal MOU, Memo of Understanding, and have signatures on all partnerships. And both the specificity of what each partner does and what can expect from this model is important. It's also the case that we have one arrangement across all the partners. So it doesn't work if, not to call out anyone in particular, but if Green Bay wants to do something a different way than Stevens Point, these models break down because the overhead gets to be so great that it just doesn't work. One last point on this slide, Extended Campus is the investor and the fiscal agent for these models, so we front all the money on the development side and then cover all the losses until break even. And then we start distributing funds. We distribute funds then therefore to our partners both to cover expenses and then for revenue beyond expenses. It costs about $1 million per program to develop it and get to break even. So just to give a sense of what the resource demand is there, and that comes from our own funds based on our cut, so to speak, of the revenue that comes in. So we, in other words, recycle those funds to develop new programs. These programs work. As Marie said, you really need to provide different kinds of things for adult students, different marketing, different way they enter into the university, different supports for them. We do a guide on the side of support for all students, different supports for the faculty. Our goal is different from a for-profit OPM. We're trying to build capacity of online learning for all of our students. So these programs have grown in enrollments by 54% over the last 5 years. And we're not the only game in the system. I don't want to give you that impression at all. There are, each campus has already their own distance ed programs, some of them blended face-to-face distance ed, some of them distance ed only. But our programs are growing 3 times greater than the campus-only distance ed programs. There's a lot of different reasons for that I'm happy to go into. But just to say that it's the kind of concentration of resource and the focus on adults per se that I believe is the biggest contributor there. Oh, sorry, one more thing. And as Chancellor Blank said about bringing students into Madison, it's no good if they come in and then fail. The retention rate is 80% on these programs on average, which is about double what the national average is, which is fantastic. And the time to degree is shorter by a substantial amount. Lots of people are interested in how the funds work. This table is, again, lots of information there, and the information is in your region packets. But just to say that last year, these programs generated about $10 million that gets transferred back to the campuses. That includes, again, reimbursement for expenses and then revenue beyond expenses. This table does not include UW-Flex. UW-Flex contributes an additional cumulative across the 5 years it's been going, about $9 million. Most of that has been going to Milwaukee as our primary partner. Parkside now is receiving some of that since they have the business degree. But again, so this is becoming a much more substantial sliver of the budgets of campuses, and more importantly, the enrollments of campuses. Our goals going forward are to try and double enrollments by the year 2025, and we're going to do that by adding 2 or so programs per year. We have about 4,800 students enrolled right now in these programs, so that'll bring us to about 9,000 to 10,000. Again, about, well, not again, this is the first time I'm mentioning it, but the return to campuses is about 70% of the funds that are generated. And we want to do this again while maintaining the high quality that we have in our student outcomes. So again, 80% or so of retention and shorter time to degree. Thank you for running through that. So what I'd like to do is, and I don't know how do I hit the button on the video. So we have a very short 2-minute video to introduce students to you, and then I want to introduce Richard Carter, and he'll talk about his experience as well.
I had a 1-year-old child that really didn't know me because I was working 70, 80 hours a week. So I decided to make a career change.
You know, I've had a lot of people in my life that are like, why are you going back to school? Why aren't you 45 years old? And I just said, why not?
The things that I do revolve around making sure they have a home life that's a little bit better than I had.
It was incredibly flexible. I did have to figure out arrangements to care for children at home, so I got to kind of balance out my time.
I didn't want to do just a regular job. I didn't want to do something that I wasn't passionate about.
Like, this is me. Like, this is all of the things that I'm kind of struggling with. It's the kind of program that allows you to fit in where you have the time and the opportunity. That's actually been great since I have a lot of stuff going on.
I could fit it into my crazy work-life schedule, my trying to be a dad schedule, my trying to be a husband schedule.
I could tailor my educational experience to my life versus tailoring my life to the educational experience.
For me personally, I think it gave me the ability to build wealth instead of just making money.
In a classroom, he has to deal with the whole class. But online, the professor had more of a one-on-one contact with me. They all took interest in who I was as an individual. That was huge for me.
it's been a good investment in myself. To know that you can do something that makes a difference is phenomenal.
A recent job interview that I had, I was able to say, look, I can handle that. I can do that.
Sky's the limit once you get through the programs, and what you will learn and who you will learn it from and who you will learn it with will leave a lasting impact on your life and your career.
Okay, great, thank you. So I want to introduce Master Sergeant Richard Carter. Richard is enrolled currently in the BS in Health Information Management through Parkside. He's an active student in the program and has been enrolled continuously since spring of 2017. Tells me he's scheduled to graduate January-ish of 2021. And in that sense, a pretty typical pace. As Marie said, students across the nation, and it's true in our programs as well, are enrolled part-time. They're working this program into their life. Richard lives in Partyville, and he's an active member of the Wisconsin Air National Guard. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Richard.
President Cross, President Peterson, members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Ward, and Director Broman, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the pleasure of your time today. So, as you mentioned, I'm a HIMT student through UW-Parkside, and just about 2 years ago I had a small realization. I had just got a job, and I was 2 years into it already. And I was not taking full advantage of the benefits that it afforded to me, and the biggest one of which was tuition assistance. And previous attempts in my career had been met with high cost of entry. I'd always thought about being a nurse, and every campus I went to, it was, well, it's 40 hours a week and plus clinicals. And at the time I was working 24-hour shifts on the fire department, and one of the directors actually told me, well, just go ahead and work weekends. That's not really how it's going to work, and I like my health insurance and paycheck, and my wife and I were starting a family and all that. So I kind of eventually resigned myself to the fact that it's probably just not going to happen. Kind of the same with my wife. She was going for actually culinary studies, which I still benefit from. I'm glad she took some of those classes. But she realized that the hours of a chef and all that weren't really conducive to being a family life, so she kind of resigned from her school as well. I'm not really going off my notes here. Your presentation, I could speak so many points to what her presentation was there that really spoke to me. So eventually I changed my career in the military from firefighting to medic, and actually in the hopes of lowering that cost of entry into the nursing career field, and it still wasn't really there. So, like I said, fast forward to 2017, and a coworker of mine was talking about going back to school, and he's like, I think I got something that's going to be interesting for you. It's health information management and technology. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's that all about? Well, it's entirely online. Oh, well, that's nice. How do I do that? And what more drew me to the program too was that I had all these bump-ins with information technology that I didn't really acknowledge or recognize throughout my career. I actually enrolled at UW-Milwaukee in 1999, and after not a stellar semester at Cardinal Stritch, but we won't talk about that. And I met this student that was pitching the new information technology program, but he just couldn't explain it well enough that I didn't know what he was trying to sell me, so I passed on it, unfortunately, and that probably would have been a good opportunity to get into the ground level. But anyway, what spoke to me with the program was not that it was only online, but it was through a reputable background like UW-Parkside and UW Extension System, and not some of those other heavily advertised online programs that, you wonder if they're scams or not. So, again, I totally went off script here. So late in December of 2016, I made the decision that I was going to go for it, and within a couple weeks, my student success coach, Robin Schwerin, got me enrolled quickly and painlessly, and I was attending that spring semester as well. And the staff at UW Parkside was great to work with. I pitched to my wife is that I was going to do my best to maintain that work-life balance and now add school into the mix and keep that from interfering with the family time. And it definitely has helped keep me true to my word on that. And especially now with the Canvas application, I can listen to the lectures during my kids' karate practice or on my commute into work and still get the information so that I can come back after work and hit the ground running with projects and milestones, etc. I got some fun news too. My degree has already worked for me before I have even graduated. Our small clinic, coincidentally right around the same time, the Air National Guard was transferring to an electronic health record from paper-based records. And just in the first couple semesters of learning, I was able to help steer some of those conversations towards a more successful outcome, get some of those late adopters on board, some of the older providers, get them educated on the benefit to them as a provider when paper is kind of the comfort zone at the time. And then not only that, as of January 27th, I will start a new position at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. as the Senior Clinical Informatics at the National Guard Bureau. And my new function will be to roll out a new electronic health record, MHS Genesis, to all 89 Guard units within the next 3 years. And we're already going to be starting 4 beta test sites this August. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And the success that I've been having so far has also inspired my wife. She recently enrolled through the Flex program at UW-Milwaukee, and she is now taking an online history degree, and she's taking 12 credits a semester to try to catch up to graduate at the same time as me, because, you know, competition, right? So I just want to thank all of you for making it easy to get back into it, because like you said, it's kind of a stacked progression. That was exactly the path that my career took, so I could really relate to that. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.
It's a wonderful presentation. Certainly, we heard just a lot there. Questions from the board? Yes, Vice President Grebe.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. And Marie, I thought that your description of some of the most significant issues facing higher education today was remarkably cogent and meaningful to the situation I think we find ourselves in. Thank you. I have 2 questions that may or may not be related that I'd be interested in hearing your perspective on. First of all, the idea of extending what we do online to non-traditional students going forward seems to me to hit 2 imperatives that we have as a system. One is that part of the Wisconsin idea that, as Charles Van Hise said, compels us to take the influence of the university out to every family in the state. Second, it seems to me that we have a business imperative. We have an infrastructure that is designed for a demographic situation that either does not or will not exist. So my 2 questions are, one, would you advise us to be thoughtful about any tensions in trying to meet both of those imperatives, taking education to the citizens in the state who need it, who we ought to be serving, and addressing our nuts and bolts business imperatives? And second, which may or may not be related, you described some institutions that have been very aggressive in pursuing this. And I wonder if you look at what people like Mitch Daniels or Michael Crow have done, are there any lessons that you'd suggest we keep in mind from their experiences, including things that you'd advise us to worry about or avoid? Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Those are really great questions. So What I love about what you asked for the first question is that you are seeing this. I think this whole issue of adult learners and higher education has a number of different facets. So without being crass, if you want to survive as a higher ed institution, especially say in a rural part of the state, you really have to figure out who you're going to serve, because again, the traditional age students, that number's going down. I would say in that case, you should be taking a look at what's happening in the Pennsylvania state system of higher education, the PASHE system. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and when I was growing up there, it was the baby boomers, these campuses were just filled with students. And it really took care, rural America, so you could get a good degree even if you were living up in Erie or Kerwinsville or the campuses. There aren't enough students there going to those campuses now. The campuses are in a lot of financial trouble. They have a fairly new chancellor, Dan Greenstein, who was at the Gates Foundation, and his job is to transform them. What they're trying to do, and I use it to be kind of, I hope, as an instructive kind of example. What they're trying to do is use labor market data and really look at each of the regions and find out, well, what are the jobs that require higher education in that area for the people who are living there? And yes, a lot are going to be the adults, the incumbent workers, even people who might have gotten a degree years ago, but they've not maybe worked in that field, or maybe it's kind of out of date. IT, for example, had you started 20 years ago, you would have learned everything new just in your career since then, so it probably was okay. So I think there's actually a nice business way to start making that change, which is to think about, and I agree with you, your campuses, it's all about the community, it's about going out to the students. And I say this, I realize some people might disagree, but we have to stop thinking in terms of the students coming to us in higher ed. We have to figure out how to go to them. And it's got to be more than just, I offer classes in the evening at the high school. It's online, it's service opportunities where maybe in a library, you've got an advisor there a couple of days a week. It's like, how do you embed yourself in the communities and the workplace? Because where are most adult learners? They are in the workplace. And so if you start working with employers, there's a lot of interesting work going on there. So yes, from a mission perspective and a business perspective, I think it's imperative that we all do both, and certainly in Wisconsin. Lessons from, both Mitch Daniels and Michael Crow, look, they go big. They are not afraid. They're bold. They take a lot of heat when they make one of these big decisions. And I know that Purdue, Kaplan, boy, that was in the news for a while, but what he has done, what he really felt was that Purdue was too far behind. They really hadn't gotten into online at all. You're in a different place. And so he, brought in the academic part of Kaplan, which, by the way, and I know, again, there's for-profit, there are people who think they're terrible and some who, think they're good. Kaplan actually had a very good reputation for what they did in the academic side. They had some of the smartest people. I've hired some of them in my career. And the issues with marketing, et cetera, were often a different unit. It wasn't the academic side, because they're, so when they were brought into Purdue and they became Purdue Global, their president, who used to be at Northwestern, I mean, I know Betty, we just gave her an award, Betty Vandenbosch. She is as all about high quality, but with innovation as possible. And so I think the lessons would be, and I get to say this and then leave, I'm going to drive home after this, go big. Like, you can't be incremental if you're going to make these changes. You've got to really make some bold steps and step out and be, we are Wisconsin and this is what we're doing. And then you'll get in the paper for a while, but like Purdue Global is growing and they're doing great stuff. Does that help?
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Regent Klein.
Yes, and it's Richard Harris, is that, do I have your name right?
Richard
Carter. Well, I just want to say thank you for your service and thank you for being here today. You did a great job in your presentation and you brought it all home for us. And thank you, Chancellor Ford and Ms. Sinney and Aaron for being here. Great presentation. I think I'm liaison to Extended Campus, is that right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been out to Aaron's operation, and I just would say first, our mission, so it's all ages, all socioeconomic backgrounds. My mother-in-law graduated in '76 from University of Wisconsin Green Bay online. So I mean, it's not new to us, this whole idea of the extension and remote education. I was very impressed when I went to visit with you, Aaron, on everything that's going on. Good success. And, there's market research behind all the degree programs, everything is coming together. But what I would challenge us to think about is to be more system-minded in it, and maybe that's the wrong approach, but you get a kind of an impression of the 1,000 points of light coming up, and what Aaron's doing is collaborating across our institutions and trying to take the best of breeds. But I think we could accelerate what's going on, and I think we need to think about that because, we're branding, first of all, under all these different campuses, and then we're branding under University of Wisconsin Extended Campus. So we've got a bunch of different brands going on, and sometimes we're collaborating and sometimes we're not. And that's kind of the history of our system, and some of that's really good. But in this time of quick change, I think we need to accelerate our efforts to collaborate where we can, not everywhere. So I just say that, but thank you all for being here and great presentation.
Regent Whitburn, then Regent Tiedemann.
Several comments and a little different take on our history to date in this area. First, let me commend you, Chancellor Ford, for your efficacious work with regard to online programming at Parkside. A member of my family has been involved with one of your courses. About 4 years ago, President Cross and I did a press conference with then Governor Walker up in Wausau announcing the statewide kickoff of the FlexLine Flex Degree program. At that point, the observation was that we have one citizen, one adult in 5 in Wisconsin with some college, but had not completed. The number then that we talked about was 750,000. Now the number we hear is 815,000. The concern that I have is return on investment. You'll recall, those of us that have been around here, you'll recall, Ed, we have spent tens of millions of dollars getting this teed up, getting it credentialed, to face very broad resistance from our most of the faculty on most of the campuses. I pulled from the system here the data this past year on degrees conferred in the FlexLine program. 39 nursing degrees, 37 information science and tech degrees, 18 BS's, bachelor's degrees in diagnostic imaging. So system-wide in the Flex degree program, we've got 96 degrees, and we're all these years later. So Aaron knows that I've been grumpy about the throughput. This is where the rubber meets the road. I heard Mitch Daniels given a presentation in April on what he was doing. As you've discussed, he purchased an infrastructure, very different than what we've had here. So as we go forward, I hope that we can be eyes wide open and in fact pay attention to the investment, and then have realistic targets, and then hold people accountable to get to them.
Yeah, thank you. And Jerry and I share share an interest in numbers and the accuracy of numbers. So the numbers that you quoted were just for 2018. Yeah, we've got over 600 graduates from Flex over the course of its career. It started, as you all know, so I'm being a little defensive here. It started, as you know, in 2014. So 5 years later, 600 graduates, I would challenge any campus, if you were starting a new campus, would you have 600 graduates after 5 years? Maybe, but that's a big lift. Flex is a pretty unique case, and I agree with you that the throughput has been the challenge there, and it's because well, there's a lot of reasons for it, but it's such a different model that the infrastructure cost is huge. If we had more resources, and I'm not asking for more resources, if we had more resources, if we purchased a national Kaplan, would that have looked different? Probably. But that is the reality we face for sure. One thing I want to leave you with is our growth goal is to double enrollments over the next 3 biennium. That's a sustainable model because that's the resources that we have that we can continue to plow in and grow the programs. I thought one of the things that Marie was going to say about the lessons learned of Arizona State and Purdue Global and Southern New Hampshire is you had to start 20 years ago because that's really what they did. And they went big 20 years ago, and they're reaping those rewards. So we can't do that, obviously, but I think going forward is how do we establish a sustainable growth with the resources we have? And then one last point. Many of you may have seen Southern New Hampshire was profiled in Chronicle of Higher Ed, or maybe it was Inside Higher Ed about a month ago, talking about how it grew from 30,000 to 130,000 over the last 10 years. They have a marketing alone budget of $139 million. So that's about 12 to 13 million per month that they put solely into marketing. So we're never going to do that. There's just no way that we will do that. So what is our sweet spot, and how do we establish our goal within the Upper Midwest to take full advantage of the real brand power that UW has? That's really what our challenge is.
Chancellor.
Thank you. I'd like to add a couple of points, Regent Whitburn, on the flex option. So UW-Parkside received approval from the Higher Learning Commission in March of this year to offer the degree program. We will have our first graduates in the BSBA, the Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, in the flex format in December, so a week from tomorrow. So we're very excited about that. And the program is exceeding enrollment projections. I believe they're between 50 and 60 students. If I had my phone, somebody will text me that number probably, but between 50 and 60 students enrolled, and it continues to grow on the different entry periods. So we're very proud of that. But the other point I want to make, that the growth in the collaborative programs and the flex option in the BSBA at UW-Parkside is 100% attributed to faculty leadership and faculty engagement. Without their involvement at UW-Parkside, we would not have 10 collaborative degree programs. So I really want to make sure that they get credit for this hard work. We provide the environment, and they're making it happen. So thank you to our faculty.
Would you mind if I just added one comment to that?
If I could just respond.
Sure.
I chaired the education committee at the time that we kicked forward to do this bachelor's degree, and that would have been 3 years ago. And it goes to show, as your presentation was talking about, the time to get things teed up, to kick forward, to attract students, and faculty getting organized to get things done. So, as I said earlier, congratulations on your tenacity.
I would just add that when you're working with a very large system that has a lot of history, it's really important to be thinking in terms of 10 or 20 years from now. And what can you do now? I mean, I didn't say, yeah, you should have started 20 years ago, because that's not really helpful. But you can start now, and you can be, at UMUC, we used to make a lot of small bets. We would try things. We would have sort of like an innovation group piloting. And, we forget the telephone, which is now, and this is not really a phone anymore, but we are supposed to use it as a phone. the telephone was around for something like 16 or 17 years before it was widely adopted. And there was actually marketing efforts by the phone company to get people to use it because nobody was using it. They just walk outside and go next door and talk to their neighbor. So we have to remember that sometimes something will roll along like this and then explode when the world's ready for it. Western Governors is basically the flex model, and they have way over, I think they have 125,000 students now. They've been around a long time. They weren't this big then, but man, when the time is right and people are ready for it, it goes.
So, just a second, Regent Walsh. So I'm interested a little bit on financing opportunities or just discussions about that, because as you know, Aaron, and as you highlighted, there's just not that kind of investment dollar here today. But I do think there's an array of foundations and other folks that are focused on, is this the next generation of higher educational funding and performance? And I think we've overcome things like, quality dilutes when you do this sort of blended learning or straight direct online learning. Are there some potential funding opportunities? I too have been to your organization, very highly talented staff. I wonder, and I think we've taken advantage of some of those, but I'm thinking grants and other kind of investments. Just talk a little bit about that.
So there are. Lumina Foundation, Gates Foundation, both are heavy into this area. In some ways, the financing is simpler and more complicated, both. The simpler part of it is it's very much runs on a profit loss model. So, it costs, as I said, about $1 million per program to develop a new program. That does not include, it does include in a way new staff that get hired with each new program that need to come online. And then there's about this 18 to 20 month period of development to launch. So if we had, again, and I'm not asking for this, but if we had 3 million more, in theory, we could develop three additional new programs. And that's where the growth is going to come. So the simpler part of it is it's kind of a machine at this point. You put the inputs in and you can develop those programs. The harder part of that is where to find that money that's sustainable, because it's not just putting input into the front end and then it just happens. You've got to figure out the way to recycle it. And so a grant fund, we did get a grant from Lumina, you all probably remember when we were starting UW-Flex, and that put us over a particularly important bump. But then that funding goes away, and then you find out you have to find other sources of funds. But I would actually enjoy an additional conversation about, are there some ways that the financing could work even better?
Yeah, certainly when you look at the population, that's a consideration that we all have to have. Regent Walsh.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the students sitting at the table, it seems to me that you found your niche purely by accident. You happened to talk to the right guy. He had a program that fit for you. That's not very scalable for us. Can you give us some ideas that you think might work for us to communicate with folks like you you'd already had 2 unsuccessful post-secondary ed experiences. The fact that you went back for a 3rd and gave it a shot is pretty amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was kind of unfortunately happenstance, I guess you could say. Speaking to Southern New Hampshire University, I do see their advertising dollars at work, so I am familiar with their commercials. I guess, yeah, I would think that marketing would definitely help that area, just getting the word out, finding different avenues to get into the workplaces. I know you talked about University of Maryland. They're very heavily sold on the military side, especially at deployed locations. When I was over there, I heard that name come up a lot for people taking courses and working towards their degree. For me, I wasn't actually actively looking at the time, so maybe that's part of it. If my brain had been attuned to some of the advertising around, maybe I would have heard of it on my own if I was actively looking, but like I said, I kind of resign myself to, well, if it happens, it happens, or maybe it's not going to happen. I'm in my career now. This is where I'm going to be for the next 20 years, so.
So my next question to you is, who have you talked to about the program at Parkside? Or can we count on you to be an ambassador?
Quite a few, yes.
Okay.
All of my airmen that are below me, they're talking about going to school, and a lot of them want to go to like accelerated nursing programs where they're there for months and months at a time, and that's their plan. That's great. And I said, well, if you want to do some other ways and get some, experience while you're studying too, this is another option for you. And some of them have taken me up on that offer. And like I said, my wife's a good example of that too. So.
That's great. And I hope when you and your family tire of DC that you'll consider coming back to Madison.
Yeah, and again, funny thing, so I also work with Badger Honor Flight. I coordinate their military escort. And one of the former medical directors came walking up and she's like, oh, what are you going to be doing out in DC? And I said, clinical informatics. And on purpose, And yeah, I kind of. She's like, well, it's rare to talk to somebody that actually knows what I do. Oh, what do you do? Well, I'm director of coding, whatever. And oh, well, thanks. She's like, well, when you get back from DC, look me up, and
Wisconsin would love to have you back.
Thank you. So yeah, it's good. All the opportunities that just being enrolled have opened up to me, and looking up at the screen there, and the Masters of Healthcare Administration, might be my next step, and.
We can take care of that.
It feels real, so.
Yeah. She'll loop you in right away.
Yeah.
Really,
Thank you.
Regent Tiedemann.
Chancellor Ford, Dr. Sinney, Dr. Bauer, and Master Sergeant Kurt, thank you as your fellow non-traditional student. I have a couple questions, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I have many questions, I should say, so I'll ask my top 3 and go from there. Can you speak to any differences, if any, in advising and support services for UW Extended Campus students, job fairs, internships? You spoke about student success coaches. How many students are there per student success coaches, or is that delegated elsewhere to the on-campus advisors?
This is a super important part of this, and actually to follow up one point that Richard mentioned, even if it's happenstance of a student coming in, we try and make the threshold to then come in as absolutely low as possible. Because adult students are savvy shoppers. If we don't respond to them within 24 hours, they're looking elsewhere. And that's part of that then follows through all the way through. So we have these new role, which is a student success coach for the collaborative degrees, and for Flex it's called an academic success coach. But the essential features of it are that it's wraparound, and some call it intrusive advising. So we reach out to students weekly to urge them on. The ratio is about, on Flex, it's about 125 to 1. And in the collaboratives, it's about 220 to 1. That's as opposed to a traditional advisor on a campus. National norms is about 350 to 1. And that's because it's a reactive model, not a proactive model. So we do that support work. The academic advising per se and the collaborative degrees takes place on the campuses. So there has to be a very close handoff with the success coach and the academic advisor per student. We try and make this a kind of concierge model, so students will typically say, I don't know how financial aid works, or in the case of veterans, I don't know how the veteran benefits work. So again, we're trying very hard to have active handoffs to actual people, so that students are not left alone to figure this out on their own. There was probably more to what you were asking, but that's the basic model, is really to wrap around the student with support. Because again, adult students, in addition to having very busy lives, our systems in higher ed are often very Byzantine, and they need translators.
And those remote learners are communicated the same opportunities for job fairs, internship fairs, things of that nature?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the answer is yes, and we're actually, and that happens on the campuses. So, so the campuses do a really good job with that, and we're trying to continually figure out how to augment that as best as we can. Yeah.
Thank you. That was my first question. Second, can you speak to any differences, if any, in the financial accessibility? Is there like the dollar per credit difference maybe for someone utilizing extended campus?
So these are what are called service-based priced courses. These are all cost recovery programs. So they have a set tuition price per credit that does not differ in-state or out-of-state.
Okay.
The cost is roughly the same, a little bit cheaper, but roughly the same as the comprehensives. So if I'm remembering this right, it's 404. Where's Steve? Okay, 440 per credit, undergrad, and 850 per credit for the master's programs. So roughly comparable. And these are financial aid eligible as well, so we encourage the financial aid as much as possible.
And my last question before I give the mic up to anyone else who wants to ask questions. How frequently do you have your learners in this program return to previously attempted programs that might fall under those 24 programs that you had displayed earlier and that are also included in the materials? And with that, do you see a significant number that have expired credits, be they AP or from previously attempted, actually like on campus attempts before?
That's probably a more complicated question because I'm not sure there's patterns there quite as much as it's an individual assessment. But I will say that on the front end, we do spend a lot of time on the kind of credit portfolio assessment to try and get as much credits with the small c for students as they possibly can. In terms of whether students come back to complete a degree that they've started, sometimes that happens, but these degrees are very focused in their professional areas. Right. So we don't have, for example, a degree completion in political science or other kinds of degrees that fall. It's not exactly true. We have some that fall outside of those three areas, but by and large, it's really within those three areas. So it's more thinking about how to help students transfer in as much as they can that makes sense. Things have changed over the course of people's lives, so everything doesn't transfer in.
Thank you, Regent Tiedemann.
Thank you.
Before I turn it over to President Cross, I'll just say, as we look to modernize the UW system, this is exactly the kind of conversation that we need to be having. I certainly appreciate all of the members of the panel bringing your perspectives here. Dr. Cini, you've been such a great resource for us. I hope you'll continue to do that, because these are things that are non-traditional we need to be thinking about, and how we get to that new evolved level is going to be pivotal for our success. When we think about graduation rates, we think about the opportunity that this class of some college, no degree provides us. We've got to be crisp on this. And so with that, I'll turn it over to President Cross to make some final comments.
I'm trying to figure out how to organize my thoughts so I don't sound like I'm a discombobulated individual in the way I think, and that's going to be impossible, I think. What I'm attempting to do with the board is, at almost all of our meetings, try to have a strategic issue that we discuss, one that's relevant to where we're headed as a state and as a university. Earlier last year, we had a discussion about student mental health, and that led to some action on our part, and I think that was very important for the board to engage in that. Today, we're having a discussion about non-traditional, what I would call the new traditional student, and how to best serve those and the nuances and differences. And I could ask every chancellor over here. They have online programs. We all have online programs. But this whole world is changing. And I want to talk just a little bit about this. And Marie mentioned it slightly and alluded to it, but a couple of things that are important here. Aaron and I, along with others, visited several companies, but Aaron's manufacturing, Aaron snowblowers and the like, and met with Dan and his team. And something that I keep saying, we have to go to them. They can't come to us. Where are they? There's 815,000 people that don't have a college degree but have some college in the state of Wisconsin. Where are those people? 95% of them are employed. They're busy. They're feeding their family. They don't have time to do some of these things. We have to go to them, and we have to go to their employers. And the university, in order to execute the Wisconsin idea, has to express itself to those entities where those people are. I think some of the question that Regent Walsh was alluding to is, Richard, how did you find out about how was it? One of the comments that Aaron made that I now disagree with, nothing, I'll tell you why in a minute, is that early on we had to expand our program offering, something that Regent Whitburn was alluding to is frustration. I share that. Or why can't we get this flex degree moving faster? We had trouble getting buy-in on the front end from the faculty to say, yes, we will work on our program, knowing what programs were wanted in the market. We got some of that. It took us a while to get the business degree up and running, and that's probably the one that's in the highest demand and the easiest. Well, I think now we have a fundamental base of degrees in the flex area, but we also have collaborative degrees. Now the shift has to be not to grow our market by growing our programs, but by growing our efforts to reach out. And I don't think we have to invest $100 million to serve the people of Wisconsin. I think we need to put boots on the ground, walking into these businesses, going after those 815,400. The way your numbers looked at it was like 400,000 would be interested in doing that. Holy schmoly, that's a lot higher than our research showed probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I'm thinking, goodness, what does it cost us to put boots on the ground to sell the services we provide and introduce businesses and their employees to this process? I think that's the marketing we need to engage in. The business imperative that Regent Michael Grebe, I'm getting old, give me a break. The Regent Michael Grebe mentioned is really important. When Marie says that for the next, I don't know when the window is going to change, maybe forever, we're going to be down somewhere between 7.5% and 15% in students, the traditional age students. And at the same time, employers need more of what we provide. And we have more of those in this state. This is the strategic transformation that has to take place in our system. And I'm leaving, and if I were to stay here, I'm going to be hammering that home over and over again. And I think Regent Klein mentioned this issue, and I want to question this. Years ago, when we started a concerted online effort, long before I was here, there was the Learning Innovation Network, or whatever that was called. And Kevin was the president of the system at the time, and we were trying to create this concerted common effort, shared effort. That dispersed, and it all became decentralized. And I'm wondering, had I been here and had I been a chancellor at the time, I probably would have supported that decentralization. I'm not sure that's what we need to do today. I'm questioning that, and I'm trying to study the Penn State, the global system, the Maryland's, and Michael Crow and I are friends, and so Mitch and I are as well. I understand what they're doing. What is it that Wisconsin needs to do strategically? And I believe it's get into those businesses where those people are and serve these people in Wisconsin better. If Margaret Farrell were here, still she was a regent, she would question any effort to reach beyond the state. We got to serve the people of the state of Wisconsin first. And I don't think that's going to take $1 gazillion. I think it takes a concerted effort, and that has to be part of our strategic initiative. And there are some programs that we need to develop, yes. I agree with that, but we're going to expand the number of students we serve by reaching out to them, letting them know what's available, that they can do it like Richard is doing. Great story, Richard. I commend you. When I came back from the service, I went back to school too. I had 4 kids, well, 3 kids at the time. It felt like 4, I can tell you that. I was working 3 jobs, so I can relate to that. I think it's important that we have another strategic discussion in February on demographics. What are each of our campuses doing to better serve the population, and how are they, I don't want to use this word, how are they adjusting to the enrollment challenges they face? The challenges that Madison is facing are totally different, and we have to understand that. But that's not true for Green Bay, Stevens Point, Oshkosh, et cetera. And I want the board to have that discussion with our chancellors. Whether we do that in February or March, that's something I think we need to do. Part of my other comment here is this. The university, we made an intentional effort so that the degrees we offer online were identical to the degrees we offer on our campus. So there was never any question about, is this a UW degree? We wanted it to be the same. And I will stand on that. I will defend that. There cannot be any secondary label or value issue. However, what I'm seeing in this visit to Aaron's, Century, Pete from Century Insurance, Bill from Briggs and Stratton, I could go on and on here, Jan from Marinette Marine, it could go on and on here. They want us to certify things they teach, whether it's in project management, which we have a certificate in, or it's in some component that's necessary for their business. Will you validate that for us? And can you, in fact, at some point turn that into a stackable credential that can accumulate in the portfolio of a student for something larger than simply a unit or component or a competency or knowledge that stands by itself? Our challenge in the future, and this is a strategic question, is a university degree, which is the accumulation of credits in a predetermined curriculum. Is that what businesses really need? You also heard Marie talk about this idea that, and I have definitely heard this from different businesses, several in the Oshkosh, in the Fox Valley. We would love to be able to hire a kid right out of high school. Could you help figure out a way for them to get a degree while they're working and learning with us? That strategic challenge is in front of us. And I don't have many more of these meetings left, so I'm taking advantage of that, and I'm on my pulpit right now. I think this is a strategic direction that the state of Wisconsin has a foundation in that we can build on to better serve the people of the state. And I'm going to be pushing that for the few months that I have left. So thank you, Regent. Thank you for allowing me to just go off here.
You're welcome. Again, to the panel, thank you so much. Very, very informative. We do have a little bit of business left before us. We'll now move to item number 12. We're considering a proposed scope statement to make modifications to Chapter 18 in the Administrative Code that would allow for an update in language to more closely align with nationally recognized language on harassment and intimidation. The proposed modification to UW System Chapter 18 would amend the language governing the prohibition on one person using email or other forms of electronic communications or phones to intentionally harass another person. The current language prohibits such action when undertaken, and I quote, with the intent to harass, annoy, or offend another person, end quote. This proposed change would eliminate the words annoy and offend. In November, the UW system held a preliminary hearing and public comment period on a scope statement that describes revisions to this administrative rule. If the board approves this scope statement today, the next step in the process is the drafting of changes to the administrative rule prescribed by the scope statement. That language will come back to this board 2 more times, once to notice a public hearing on the changes, and then again to approve the changes. After that, it goes on to Governor Evers for his approval or denial. This is a process that is prescribed under state law for all administrative rules at all agencies. With that, I would seek a motion to approve Resolution 212. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Any discussion on item 18, or item 12, chapter 18? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to again thank Chancellor Watson and his team for their hospitality during our time here. I'll ask and call upon Regent Jan Mueller to read a resolution of appreciation to UW-Whitewater as our host for this December meeting. Regent Mueller.
Whereas the Board of Regents is pleased to recognize the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater as the official host campus for the board's December 2019 meeting, and the board members are grateful for the generous hospitality extended by Chancellor Watson and the entire Warhawk community. And whereas the board appreciated the keynote address, Inspire, Engage, and Transform, more than 150 years of regional impact, a theme carried throughout the university's presentations. And whereas the Business and Finance Committee learned about operational excellence at UW-Whitewater from its Vice Chancellor for Administrative Affairs, Grace Cricket, who summarized the university's commitment to identifying process improvements and implementing continuous incremental change. And whereas the READY Committee heard a presentation by Professor Ross Kashian and several of his students who discussed their work transforming regional communities through data, part of the mission of the UW-Whitewater Fiscal and Economic Research Center. And whereas the Capital Planning and Budget Committee received a closer look at how UW-Whitewater approaches deferred maintenance challenges. And whereas the Education Committee heard about academic programs that inspire, engage, and transform students for success, a presentation that highlighted business programs that engage students internationally and propel them to first-place performances in competitions against the top business schools in the nation. And whereas the board was delighted to hear from UW-Whitewater psychology major and student athlete Adrianna Green, featured in this month's Student Spotlight. And whereas board members were pleased to visit UW-Whitewater at Rock County, where more students will soon be able to pursue engineering degrees through an agreement with UW-Platteville to debut in the spring 2020 semester. And whereas board members were honored to be part of the 8th stop of UW System's All in Wisconsin tour, which highlighted findings of UW-Whitewater's new economic impact report. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents hereby thanks UW-Whitewater for its in-depth presentations, forward-thinking spirit, and its many, many contributions to the UW system and the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Watson. Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Seeing none, I'd wish all in attendance a very safe and enjoyable happy holidays, and I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second. Sir.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.
A safe trip.
He's done.